Can't own the night. Don't worry about a thing. Don't worry about a thing. Don't worry about
Everyone, Hema here. I'm just going to continue my production 8, where we left off through the pout tune that described what participatory culture is. Continuing, the authors explored various concepts which form participatory culture. However, the one big theme and central idea that stood out to me was defines play as the capacity to experiment with one's surroundings as a form and mode of problem solving, learning, and growing. And this quote can be found on page 4. Pertaining to the lives of children and youth, play is vital in influencing and building children's relationship to their bodies, tools, communities, surroundings, and knowledge. In my own experiences connecting to this big central idea of play, being the only child of parents who are both immigrants and got divorced when I was 2 years old, I had to learn almost everything on my own through play. At this point in my life, I had very little guidance and influence during the process of learning different things. However, this emerged over the years of my childhood. By watching television and schooling, my interests of learning to use different materials, tools, and devices grew as these acted as the developing means which enabled me to engage with hands-on materials and activities. When I was a child, I was always interested in the new electronic devices, and this still is continuing on to this day. As a result of not having anyone to teach me to use them, I always had to learn through ludic epistemology, and as we've already discussed, ludic epistemology is the process in learning through play and by doing and trial and error. So like every electronic device, they always came with instructions. So reading the instructions of how to use and work with these devices were not always fun and often led me to complete boredom. And this is not to say that I don't enjoy reading, I do, but reading something, instructions on how to use on, wanting to figure it out on my own. As much as I love reading, I am not much of a reader to, like, when you were young, why read instructions when you can figure it out, right? Well, that was just for me. But yeah, so instead, I always preferred to learn how to use and work with these electronic devices through doing, whereby learning through play rather than reading the instructions. So for instance, connecting this big theme to one particular moment in my life, I remember when I was first given my first Game Boy Color. Now back then, this was the new media device that everyone had to have. It was one of the newest ones. I think the first Game Boy was a Game Boy Gray, which was big and bulky, and then they came out with Game Boy Color, which was more fun, exciting, bright colors and they were like, a lot of the Game Boy Colors were directed to the different sexes, so like females and males, like the males would have the blue colors, the girls would have the magenta and the purple. So it was the Game Boy Colors were all vibrant shades, and this, like I said earlier, is directed to the different sexes. So when I received my first Game Boy Color, in the beginning, learning how to use and work with the different games, that process was great. But then I was introduced to a new feature of how to connect two Game Boy Colors, color gamers playing the same game into one. So basically how this process worked were that two Game Boy gamers can connect their devices together, and during this process they would be able to play the same game on each of their devices. So for example, a Pokemon game, they can battle one another. As long as they have the same game, they would be able to connect. However, at this time, my younger cousin also had a Game Boy Color with the same game, and I was stoked to test this new feature out. In the beginning, this task was pretty tricky. I had many complications, part of which ended up in my Game Boy Color system being frozen and would shut off completely on its own. So, nonetheless, exploring through different ways to resolve and fix the issue, and through the process of trial and error, I used play to problem solve and came up with a solution, and this ended in my Game Boy Color no longer freezing or turning off automatically. And after this experience, I felt accomplished as I independently figured out a way to stop and put an end to this complication. from occurring and was able to pass this knowledge on to other Game Boy users as well who were experiencing these same occurrences during this point in time. Moreover, this technique I used to resolve this issue was a minor glitch in the Game Boy system that I found out, and it ended up applying to other gaming systems as well, such as PlayStations and Xboxes. Thereby, I was able to fix this problem had it occurred again in these other gaming electronic devices. And this experience pertaining to play has definitely shaped me as an educator and a learner, as I am more of a hands-on thinker and doer in other aspects of life. In my opinion, this is a very important attribute to have because it contributes to another characteristic which is very vital in society, which is multitasking. And as you know, multitasking is very important, and we all need to try to have that quality in order to succeed in life in the end. In the long run, multitasking is key. Overall, these qualities have made me more confident, and being able to help others with such practical issues involving these gaming systems is rewarding, especially for a young female. As a result of the past stereotypes of girls not being able to play video games or being considered a gamer, I felt very proud that I was able to fix different gaming systems that suffered the same minor dysfunction. And this minor dysfunction, it still occurs in other gaming systems until this very day. Not to say that I'm an expert in fixing these, but this minor dysfunction has occurred again, and obviously learning through play, you would be able to figure that out and fix this issue. So overall, the notion of play is vital as everyone exhibits their own ways of autonomy and agency through various aspects of play. Jenkins states that as children grow older, play can be used to motivate other forms of learning, and this can be found in the article on page 22. Furthermore, play is also considered to be a valuable mode of problem solving and learning because it lowers the emotional stakes of failing, and players are encouraged to suspend some of the real world consequences of the represented actions to take risks and learn through trial and error, as earlier discussed. And this is also found on not page 22 but page 23. So the next page, that quote was found. Through these reasons presented by Jenkins, we see how this big theme of play matters in relation to participatory culture and or connected learning. And as I mentioned before, this is the reason why I chose play as the theme that I chose to focus on in the article. So thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed my presentation, and